Hello, hello. So I'm delighted to be here today with Debra. Um, Debra Wade. I always think you're Debra Made. Debra Wade. Debra
Debris May.
Remade.
Debris May.
Um, and
Yes.
you have been in No Rules, Debra, for 3 years,
Yes.
which is amazing. And I'm so excited to talk to you about your journey with this because it's quite unique how you've used this membership. And I guess you probably never expected to use it in the way that you
No. I can't,
have.
having got all my work out, I cannot believe the journey that's
Oh,
happened. It's astounding,
it's
actually.
going to be so exciting to
Yeah.
talk about it. Let's start from the very beginning then. So, what tempted you to join No Rules in
Um,
the first place?
right. So post-lockdown, or rather during lockdown and onwards, I had the time to get back to being creative. So I was doing various courses. Kim Thittichai was one of them.
Yeah.
And then I saw yours advertised, I believe, on Instagram or Facebook, one or the other. And I I wanted to get back to what I was doing at college, which was making samples for agents and rolling all of that forward. So
Yeah.
that was already familiar to me. And
Uh-huh.
I wanted to see if I could go back to earning some money from my skill set.
Yeah.
Um, because it's like breathing for me to make. And at least then I could kind of have a purpose for doing it,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy making things, but I need a structure, whether it be a brief or anything similar.
Some kind of accountability or somewhere to share the joy of.
Yes, a purpose for the end product,
Yes.
if you like. So my training is in constructed textiles. Although I did the usual thing to get there, which is the art foundation and then all of that. And funny enough, No Rules has actually prompted me to go right back to my art foundation skills, which were when I was let loose in 3D workshop with big mechanical tools and bandsaws and all the rest of it. And I absolutely loved it at that stage of my life.
Yeah.
And I was always torn between 3D design and textiles. So then I moved into the form of textiles that was at least textural,
Yeah.
hence constructed,
Mhm.
which is weave knit, not print.
Right.
So anything that involves
Print was
interlock,
too flat.
yes, yeah. I'm not a flat person. I can do flat. I do flat
Yeah.
very well, but that's not my love.
But it's kind of
Um,
interesting at the moment that I'm bringing print back into my work, but only in a sort of textural kind of
yeah,
sense. And it can come back in, but
I,
in the right, in a way, in a no
yeah.
rules, you
I'm
know.
very happy to do color and texture and all of that in within what I do. And I suppose in some ways that's actually fulfilled by a fair amount of my photography, which is that was a subset of my degree, as was print. So yeah.
But it's
So
interesting how we have those boundaries on it at the time, isn't it? Oh, I really want to do sculpture and textiles, but I have to make a choice. And then I'll make
yes,
it into kind of that texture and that kind of open thinking that we now sort of have within our group makes you realize that actually let's link those things together, which we will go on
yeah,
to.
yeah. And that's always been the case. So um I don't mind uh, doing any of these forms of creative tasks.
Mm,
But what always draws me is something three-dimensional, something that involves using my fingers.
yes, yes,
So
yes,
much
yes.
more than picking up a paintbrush.
Yeah,
Um,
no, totally. Or draw specifically drawing.
yeah, I will draw for task-related things, but I'm much more of a writer in my sketchbooks
Mm.
than I am and I do sample, but only in small scale ways because most of my work is through process. So again, until I begin the process and carry on, I don't know what it's going to be. And that applies to
And
the
in that flow of
sampling.
process, one
Yeah,
thing leads to another, and it's
exactly.
designing through doing. You are
Yes.
so that, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it wasn't until much later in life that I knew there was even a word for this way of working. Because when I was at college, they always wanted me to pin things down, and they kept saying, "You're too creative." And I could not relate to why I would be too creative. But I've learned subsequently that what they actually meant was I couldn't hone it down for industry
Right.
as
Yes.
much. But they didn't really explain that to me, and I think perhaps they didn't truly know.
Hmm.
Um, so it wasn't until I did my postgrad and I went to college in Holland, and the chap there said to me about creativity that it needed to be 70% familiar and 30% new.
Okay.
And the light bulb went, and I thought, oh
Um,
my God, that's how you avoid being too creative. Now, my work is probably more like 60-40 or even 50-50 sometimes. So, which is why people respond to it and they go, oh,
No, but in a way, that 70-30 ratio, I feel like that's pretty accurate for the way that you approach No Rules in a way. You have like
yeah,
70% of what you're doing already, and then you bring in the new prompt and integrate it into what you're doing. And
yes,
it's worked beautifully,
yes.
you
Well,
know.
now that I'm in an area where I don't have a formal product to
Hmm.
produce at the end of it,
Yeah.
or industry or anything else, it's given me the freedom to just develop in any direction I choose. And finally, it's like somebody's taken the shackles off, and I'm actually able to drive at 150 miles an hour instead of 60 being
Yeah.
cautious. Yeah. So, and I think it's taken away that caution, which I've always needed.
Yes.
And perhaps I would have been better off in fine art and sculpture. Who knows? But
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter what the journey is. What No Rules has done is it's achieved me taking off those breaks, which I think is part of the essence of the whole group, if you like, is saying to people, take those breaks away and just do you
Yeah.
and go for it.
You do you.
100%. And
Totally.
that's,
Total permission to like
yes,
do it your way.
yes.
Bring in all
And
the
that's what,
elements of your life thus far that
yeah,
have brought you joy, and go back and have a look and go, hang
yeah.
on, I love this, but left that behind. What
Mm,
happens if I bring that in now?
yeah,
Mix it up to, yeah,
yeah.
totally. So,
So
yeah, sorry.
going back to the actual starting point of I came
So
in,
you joined us at Weave. So
that's
we,
right.
every 6 weeks, well, at that point, it was every 4 weeks, we were doing a new prompt.
Yeah.
And we'd done tufted and we'd done lace, and then you joined us on the weave prompts. So tell us about what you were doing then. What?
I think the thing with weave was because I'd already done so much in my degree,
Yeah.
I was happy enough doing it, but I didn't really need it at
Okay.
that stage
Yeah.
because I needed to move past that. So although I do remember doing some of it, and I haven't kept all of it by the looks of it, but there's that piece,
Oh wow.
um, which I think was sort of tufts and weave at the same time because there are
Yeah.
tufty bits.
So at that point in the library of No Rules, there was tufting and lace and weave, and we
Yes,
were approaching weave in a different way. I don't weave.
yeah.
I weave on my sewing machine. You know, it was kind of a no rules approach to weave, and like mixing things up element.
And this was what was interesting at that point was because up until then I'd been restricted by the qualities of a loom or a knitting machine, which is totally linear. And
Yeah.
all the time I was working with knitted textiles, I was forever trying to break away
Okay.
from that grid.
Yeah.
And all of a
Hold it
sudden
up
with the
again.
sewing
Hold it up
machine,
again, Deborah. Hold
hold it
hold
up
that up.
again. with
So how did you make this? Were you unweaving
um,
or?
I was stitching on top of threads that I
Mm.
think I had woven through. So, and in fact, it does actually use some of the um, fibers that I had left from my degree course. So
Wow.
there's some very nice wool in there. But in addition, there's one of my things that kind of became my signature, which is using the fruit mesh.
I just spotted
So
that.
yeah. So in
Yeah.
fact, you've got the lacy effect there.
Yeah.
And then you've got the cut tufts
I
and you've
love the
got
way you're actually even manipulating this to make it
yeah,
3D as you
yeah.
show it to us. But
Well,
also
ultimate,
that, sorry,
yeah,
the fruit net also is very much, a part of you is not just the fruit net, but that reusing,
yeah,
using upcycled kind of materials
yeah.
in the work,
So it's the
like
blends of
threading through.
color. That's always been a big part of what I do, color blending.
Mm,
Um, and in fact, if I don't have all my samples here of pre-degree show stuff, but it was very vibrant.
yes.
I started off in medieval colors, and then by the time I got to my postgrad, I was doing cacti from South America.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
then it went off into South American color, um,
And even
which
your house, we can see behind you is like vibrant color.
yeah,
Yeah.
this um yellow and blue seems to be a comfortable thing for me. Anyway, um, so having gone into weave, then we moved
That was
on.
actually quite a gentle introduction to No
Yes,
Rules for you,
yes,
really, wasn't it?
it
So
was
then the next prompt we did was paint and ink.
paint and ink. And I loved that as well because I had never actually experimented with using alcohol and stuff.
Yes.
So although this is not really a significant sample, it was very interesting for the
Mm,
blends that I could do and the fact that I could get those very crisp lines with
yeah.
the felt tips and then the very blurred.
But actually, Deborah, knowing what your work is like now, you can see the inroad with this. It's
Yes,
kind of like watery, translucent, but with stitch that's much more, sort of um,
crisp.
crisp. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the word that I'm looking for, amongst the sculptural things that you do. It's quite
yeah.
interesting to look at that on
Well,
this
here's
journey.
something very pictorial.
Uh-huh.
Um, that was a mix of paint and ink
Yeah,
with, then we went to floral. No, we went to nature.
we
That's
did
it.
go to nature. Yes.
And hence the poppy seed heads
Yeah.
that I
Things were kind of
crushed in.
mixing up. It feels like this is
Yeah.
kind of your sketchbook almost.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
we're kind of it's such a diary cloth, isn't it?
I know. There's little tiny, I don't know if you can see them, little tiny drawn lines.
Yes.
And then there's the big blurry, painty things, and then the detail of color. I do like pops of color, so that's
So do
why
I.
it's cerise.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually really like this piece.
Yeah.
In fact, I was thinking today I really should frame it and get it out
It
there.
feels like your
Um,
background is like almost like light refracting. You know,
yeah,
do you know
maybe.
what I mean? It's kind of,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I mean, this was also resist printed sideways.
Yeah.
Can you see the flat?
I can see, yes. Right.
So again, it's
My
layer
shadows or
layer
the
on layer
background.
on again, layer on layer is definitely me. So
Mm,
that's working layer on layer.
yeah.
Um, so and obviously, as ever, it was always scrap material. I get most of my thread from charity shops.
I love the way you don't worry if there's like a join or a seam and just
No,
incorporate that into it.
it's just part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, so and that's very figurative, that piece, which is rare for me, I think. I mean, we talked about framing textiles, and that was one of the things that really floored me when I went on to later pieces, because I didn't know how to present my
Yeah,
work.
it's a never-ending sort of conundrum really
Yeah,
with textiles, isn't it? And I'm so
yeah,
grateful that we could get to talk to each other about this and kind
yes.
of
And I
see
think
what each other's
ultimately,
doing in
I
with
just don't want it in a box.
no,
I never have. So when we go further along, I'll show
yeah,
you where I went. So we looked at interior textiles, but that didn't really take off for me.
yeah.
One fabric 10 ways. Um, I have some of my samples for that. That overlapped with I think automated stitch. I mean, this isn't, to me, it's not
Wow.
particularly interesting, but
It's really interesting to go back on them though.
I do quite like the textures that the stitch made.
Mm,
You see, I have never used my sewing machine in the way that I was doing with this group. So
okay.
all of a sudden, again, I was breaking free of
Yeah.
the linear, um, and using fabric in ways that yeah, I've never done before. So again, that was a real bonus of No Rules. Um, and then where do we go next? Where your work? I don't have any of my work
But
currently
you
with
did
me,
show us
but
brilliant things where you had
yeah,
stitched two skirts
two
together to
skirts
make one
together,
skirt.
panels in the side of things.
Yeah.
Um,
Which I guess again is using kind of fabric sculpturally and
yes,
inventively. You know, you
yes,
kind of the way that you do clothes and you do wear things. You'll often wear your embroideries
constantly.
around your
Yes,
neck and and we'll
yeah.
often experiment even if it is a sculpture by sort of going, how could this? I love
Yes.
it when you show us things and next to your head, taking a picture of you surrounded by all your stuff.
Yes, I mean I'm always in a creative nest.
Mm,
That's how I work.
mm.
So in fact my space next to the
Creative
sofa
nest is lovely.
is overflowing with materials to be used. It drives my husband wild because upstairs, the room that's meant to be my studio is really more of a materials environment. So I go up there and collect what I want to work with and then bring it away and work in a smaller
I
space.
sometimes find my studios the same because it's actually quite overwhelming.
Mm,
Sort of the ideas that will pop into our head from seeing all this stuff, and you need to like
yes,
take some of it away and
yes,
then go and work on that without the distraction of your head popping with ideas.
exactly. So
Yeah,
what I need is a storage room for materials and then a work room. And in fact, I work very well in a white space
I was
that I
going to
can
say
pin
that.
things on the wall,
Mm,
because I think because of that visual noise taken away.
I've been
Um,
known to put white sheets over
yes,
this actually before now when I've just need to focus and it
yes. And I
helps.
think that
Yeah.
it does help a lot.
Mm.
So where do we go next? I think we went on to Christmas, which I think I didn't do anything particular for. Again, words didn't really gel as
But
such.
it's so interesting, isn't it? How we have we have these prompts, and you're like, yeah, that didn't really resonate, but that's okay. And all the way through these, you would just be carrying on, maybe working on the last prompt, and like go
Yes,
through, and watch what other people were doing and seeing whether anything just, ideas
yes,
kind of filtered in. And
yes,
maybe words would be more like what we were discussing before, how you just tend to write things in a sketchbook. So
yes.
maybe you were just
And
gathering
maybe,
or because every time we have a prompt, it is in our mind, isn't it? It's
yeah.
like you notice it, you'll notice a poem or much more than you would before because that word is there. And it's
I
just,
had a long think about what the word might be, but I couldn't select a single. And
yeah.
because there were too many words, I couldn't then find a way to, and also I think I didn't want it on the wall. So
But that's
maybe,
also so interesting to notice about yourself.
yes, I think maybe there's a piece somewhere along the way that involves words built into it in a three-dimensional manner.
Yeah.
Long way back when I was doing craft with children in the park, we made what I called a trans poetry. So we used transparent plastic bottles to build a tree,
Yeah.
and the leaves had little excerpts of poetry that the kids had made on them. So, and I think maybe, again, that was me playing with materials in a 3D way. So
Yeah.
it's always been there.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one to come back to.
Yeah.
Um, automated stitch. Yes, I find all the embroidery stitches on a sewing machine completely terrifying. So that was a good challenge to
Mm.
play again in a sort of design way
Yeah.
with stitch. I'm just trying to find it now. Here's some of the pieces. So actually, funnily enough, for a topic that I didn't really gel with, I did quite a bit.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
this was the fruit mesh again, but
Uh-huh.
funnily enough, it didn't really look like the mesh any longer,
Yeah.
um, which was quite good. And I think
Yes.
this,
This is that's an interesting thing, isn't it? When we make something not look like,
yeah,
well, how quite did you do that?
this was automated stitch and spots, I think,
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
Um, let's put that one on there as well. You can kind of
Yeah.
see it a bit better. Um, then we overlapped automated stitch with paper.
We did.
Um, might be
Oh,
better.
wow.
No,
That's,
let's just hold it close.
oh, that's beautiful.
So that, um,
So that like scallop stitch.
yes, it was. And
Wow.
I liked the ridgy bits, so I just,
Yes. So you
but then
embrace them,
I
basically.
wanted to go round with it.
Yeah.
And it's got I think it refers back to my cacti to some extent.
Uh-huh.
Um, I mean, that just is not me.
Yeah. So
I
what did you
just,
do? Did you tear them out of a sheet of paper? How
yes,
did you do
because
it?
I realized the perforations were as spot on
I
as they
thought
could do
that's
it.
what you'd done.
Yes,
Wonderful.
yes.
Yeah.
So again, I immediately moved into texture,
Uh-huh.
um, which is
And
always,
kind of let the paper do its thing.
yes,
Embraced it rather than tried to tame it.
I'm knocking things over. I've got so much around me. There was more paper, which it
Oh, I
overlapped with
remember.
unmaking.
Yes.
So this was um, automated stitch of sorts.
Yeah.
In fact, I spent more time just puncturing the paper with the
Yeah.
needle
Yeah.
because that was the unmaking side of it. I think this was one of the paper
I love
prompts.
these. And it was almost like you were doing big weaves. So you were mixing up the weave thing with the paper, if I
Yes,
remember. Did you
yes.
make those cuts with those scissors, those herb choppers?
Yes, the multi-slice scissors, yes. And then again, I was creeping into 3 dimensions
Yes.
with these, which I didn't really know where they wanted to be in the end. So they didn't reach a
They're kind of
conclusion.
folklorish as well, aren't they? In a
Yes,
kind of
there's
way.
something about that, isn't there?
Mm.
Corn dollies or
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Might even have been influenced by buying a straw picture that I'd bought around then, so could have been that.
Most likely.
Yes,
That's the other
but
thing, isn't it? If you can add, if it's sort of within your budget to buy things that you are immediately drawn to
yes,
is a really good thing and stick them on the wall because you can't quite work out why you're drawn to them, but they can be quite pivotal.
yes.
I have.
And I think that I'm yet to explore the straw.
Mm.
In fact, funnily enough, I have been collecting straw for things. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Noted. You said
uh,
when you were getting together all of this 3 years worth of work to like document this journey, it was quite valuable when we first came on. You know, it is really interesting to go, hang on, this this piece needs more exploration. I'd
Yeah,
almost forgotten as it sat sort of over
yeah.
there, you know, so
But
yeah.
I think the difficulty is that I'm blessed with endless ideas, which can be a bit of a problem because I just don't know where to go next.
Uh-huh.
Um, on the other hand, I worked out that in fact all I should do was just let it roll. So the one that interested me most at the time, that then took me to the next place, was where I needed to
Yes.
be. So,
Trust
and
in
then
yourself to be in that kind of flow because, you know, Deborah, this is why I open No Rules, because I'm exactly the same. So many
mm,
ideas and ideas and ideas, and just needed some constraints. And
yes,
sometimes, you know, sometimes we were never sure where something would go. There would be times when there would be prompts where people would go, I don't like that prompt. But actually it completely changed them, and they were, it was unexpected what came out of it. So we,
yes,
you know, it's, yeah, it's a
uh,
funny thing.
yeah. I think also, as we said, going back to that structure and the fact that the next prompt was coming in,
Yeah.
then I started to get sequences of prompts.
Yeah.
So this, I think, was unmaking combined with layers.
Uh-huh. Burning,
Um, yes,
which we
yes.
haven't had as a prompt yet.
No, it's three layers
Yeah.
there, I think, of there's some not Tyvek, the other one that's like Tyvek, and I can't remember its name off the top of my head now. Um, and then
Neither can I.
burnt, yeah, burnt chiffon, and the back was just something woven that I could pull apart. So I like the way the colours completely changed once I layered them,
Mm.
which is fascinating. And funnily enough, I'm actually doing that again in a current piece in a different way. So this is again layers,
Yeah.
um, and this was sort of for float because I'm floating them on top.
Yes.
Um,
But it's almost like color mixing. We can't color
yes,
mix like painters can, but we can in this way. And it's
yeah,
also for me, you know, and I think the same with you, that that unexpectedness of doing this process driven
yeah,
work is thrilling, because we're
yes,
never quite sure what's going to happen, and
no.
you never quite want to know the color mixing rules or what, you know, we expect to happen. We just see if we like
Well,
it.
it's quite interesting that my color palette seems to be changing at the moment as well. So as you can see, that's got quite a lot of oranges in it. And
Mm.
there's
Oh,
a
wow,
piece of
that's beautiful.
I think that's meant for sort of float really, because it is
Yes.
floaty.
So float
Um,
float is our current prompt at the minute.
yes.
Prompt 33. So we're going through all of them in Deborah's journey. But I love
Yeah,
that. I love that pop of yellow. And it's the, you know, where you put things and the kind of ratio of color almost, isn't it? You know,
yeah, yeah.
proportions really.
Well, this again was subconscious. I worked out that doing Bajagi Korean patchwork with chiffon was quite demanding.
We never want it to be too demanding.
But I did quite enjoy it. But
Yeah.
yes. So I think we did stripes and layers. So I think that was beginning. No, it wasn't until we got to dots that
Yeah. Let's talk about dots.
I suddenly made a breakthrough.
Yes.
Um, hang on. I've got quite a lot for dots, not surprisingly. So I think we're still on layers, but that was layers and dots. Um,
Oh,
so
go again. I couldn't see.
it's got the mesh
Oh,
that you
yes, I
get around your
remember.
fruit, the spongy stuff. Then there's shredded paper wrapping, fruit net as ever, and dots on
I
top.
don't, yeah, that's
But
fantastic.
this is a really interesting one actually,
Yes.
and I think I need to
I love
definitely,
seeing it from the sideways as well. That kind of
yeah,
sand.
it's that sandwich
Yeah.
of things. Yes. And there's more of the same with the mesh. And then I kind of went off into something slightly more abstract with just one circle, which again, I don't do that much of, but
Love the
perhaps,
way it kind of pulls the tension of that circle and
yeah.
different
And I
around.
think that was just a quick,
Mm.
oh, there's a group coming up, I must do something.
Yeah. But it's almost like a kind of fabric sketch, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And then
just to
I
see.
was enjoying this one.
Yes.
So I went off
So was this
into
the first
plastic.
time that you used,
It
the
was,
kind of these plastic bottles? This is
yes,
the start. Yeah.
yes. Because I brought in, somewhere along the way, I had brought in metal,
Yes.
which was the aluminium.
Yes. Because that's actually what we did in that festive. Was that year?
Maybe that was it. Yes.
You taught us
Yes, it
all
was. You're right. This was
how to kind
Christmas.
of cut up aluminium cans. Yeah.
Yes. And
So
this
it
was
was
the
kind of
letter.
bringing into No Rules that real kind of upcycling, but how
Yes.
could we use it? So it almost, like you said before, it's unrecognizable. We're using it as a material, but you wouldn't really know. It's not
No.
obvious at all.
And
That's
funny enough,
beautiful.
this would be quite wearable because it's washable.
Yes. Tell us a bit more
So,
about this piece, Deborah.
right. So this one is chiffon, the leftover from where I had punched out the Christmas shapes.
Yes.
Because I
Wow.
I don't like getting rid of
No.
things. Um, and then just randomly stitched across
Yeah,
to
beautiful.
anchor it all, basically. Um,
I'm thinking actually within No Rules, you were also like when we did Wear Your Work, you were sharing with us the amazing necklaces you made with jigsaw pieces.
yes,
And and there was a lot of sharing, even though, within the prompts that maybe I'm sort of coming back to me now that we would just I was so impressed with your inventiveness, but also making these things that kind of just took upcycling to a whole new level, really.
yes, which I think,
No.
I mean, I've always been aiming for that,
Mm.
but it wasn't, again, until doing No Rules
Yeah.
prompts that I finessed it to quite
Yeah.
that level.
Yeah.
So I actually want to do a skirt with
Yeah.
this at some
Fantastic.
point,
Yeah.
which
That
would
would
be
be
fun.
amazing.
So just to
And
explain,
perfectly washable, actually.
yes, exactly. So
Perfectly.
plastic bottle, fruit mesh, and just one big stitch in the middle. So incredibly simple.
Mm.
I just cut the plastic with household scissors, not my good fabric scissors, and that really is all it is.
Yeah.
So then where's the really pivotal one? Yes, right. Spots, collage,
Okay. Hold it up a bit more. Wonderful.
and stitched onto mesh.
So this carried on from the one that you just showed us.
Yes,
We're like, right, hang on a minute. What happens if I stitch them and add all kinds
yeah.
of. So the ones at the back have got ink on them, or are they
No,
punched?
there's
Or
just, yes, ink,
yeah.
paper, cut tracing paper, I think it, oh no, tissue. And then the plastic bottle, which you can sort of see if I
Mm.
roll it around. And
They're
then
like
I,
the most incredible huge stitch sequins.
yes,
Yeah.
then I was also subconsciously looking, I sit opposite a wonderful piece of um Paraguayan textiles, which is made with needle weaving. And I was
That's exactly what it
referencing,
was that had
yeah,
inspired you. Do
I
you
was
have it to hand?
referencing that. Sorry,
Do you have that piece to hand?
I do, I can walk over and show you.
Okay.
That's
That'd
the
be really
easy.
cool to see it, to have it documented on here.
You can have
Because yeah,
a
sorry,
tour
it's
of
all
my,
coming back to me now because I remember you showing it
there's a photograph of mine in the background, apart from my dad in front of it.
to
But,
us. Yes.
again, colours
Yeah.
that are familiar to you. Okay, so there it
Here
is.
it is. I remember it so well. So this has such a bearing on the dots.
Yes,
These gorgeous, yeah. but doing it on the bottle.
Trying to get it close enough so you can see the detail.
Incredible.
For ages, I was looking at this piece of work. I found it in my usual charity shop environment.
Mm.
And I didn't know where it was from, how it was made. And I was always looking at it thinking, well, did they do it on a bed of nails or what?
Yeah.
And finally, I discovered how it had been done, which is stitching onto cloth and then cutting the cloth away.
Okay.
So,
And
but
then you
anyway,
just completely ignored that way of doing it and did it
of
on
course,
bottles.
yes, yes, absolutely, because that was where my material
Yes.
process was at the time.
But it
So
makes
then we,
total sense because you don't have to cut it away because it's see-through already. So you
yeah,
miss out one of the things in an impatient way and a
yeah,
clever way, and then you get this, which then
yeah,
set you off on this amazing path that from
yeah,
then on, every prompt that we did, you were kind of adding and playing with this idea.
yeah,
And that just is so exciting. It's so interesting to go. So we've had probably a year of No Rules now where you're kind of
yeah,
like warming up. And
yeah,
this is what we were saying as well, that the beauty of kind of like a membership almost is to have that time. Things take time to brew
yes.
and percolate and kind of come through. And we
But
can't rush this stuff. So when we're
no,
making finished things, we don't really get to totally explore like this.
mm,
That really excites me. And you
yeah,
don't get to the depths of where, when we get to where you are now, it's
mm,
so interesting to see all of this and this journey to there. Sorry, I got a bit
yeah, no,
excited.
that's fine. So the so now we move into 3 dimensions. Um,
So I think we went from dots, we went to, or we're still on dots, are we?
Still on
We're
dots.
still on dots, yeah.
Um, so I'm going to put it on its frame, but
Okay.
I'll show
Wow.
you close
Yeah.
up first. So
Oh,
having
it all happened in dots, didn't it?
it did, it just at that point, that's when
Wow.
it made it.
Yeah.
So so you can see what I did with the dots piece,
Mhm.
but then I wanted it in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
So and
So
maybe
did you just start making and sculpting as you
yeah,
went?
yes. I just joined the next piece until I could get it to work. And
Wonderful.
there's the needle lace. So in between some of the pieces, it's actually completely open
Yeah.
with stitching over it. And then
I
as
see. So it's like a join, like a kind of, yeah.
yeah, so I think let me point to one just there
Mm,
and there.
yes. It's so
So
subtle. I love the way that, you get that sort of different transparencies.
yes, and the white mesh again, that was the
Yeah.
garlic net, which I like
Yeah.
because it's plain white.
And it adds that
Um,
intricacy of lace, but you
yes,
don't have
lazy
to
lace,
put all this. Yes,
lazy
lazy
lace,
lace.
lazy lace. So going back to what we said at the beginning about going loose in the workshops again, because I needed to find a way of framing, mounting that piece of work,
Yes.
this was a mount that I made from scaffolding board, rusty metal, and a single nail to
So
hold
you
it.
went to a workship with somebody in
I
Brighton
did.
with this, didn't you? Which is
In
brilliant.
Brighton, we have someone called Salvage Sister,
Yeah.
and I got to go to her workshop and play with all the bandsaws and all the tools.
And you were back where you were at college again, but
Exactly.
integrating it with textiles.
Yes. But
Perfect.
this all of a sudden again, it's that contrast of the very delicate with
Oh,
the very rough.
I love that
Um,
nail holding
yes.
it there.
Oh, hang on. There we go.
Yeah.
So yes, and again, had I not been involved in No Rules, trying to think of ways to mount things and
Yep.
thinking, well, I can't buy a commercial something that works for me for these pieces.
Yeah.
So I just had to make it. And it was as simple as that. So the pieces were growing, and I was thinking, what on earth am I going to do with them? And so I think did we go on to grids next?
Um,
We were on collage.
Collage was next.
Yes, but collage kind of came in gradually. It was there, but it
You
wasn't.
added bits of color. Was that the
I
one?
did. That's right. This was
Yeah.
collage. This piece.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
So now I've gone off into a turquoise and sea
Yeah.
side palette. Um, hold it against there.
Wonderful.
The needle lace
That
again,
pop of color coming in. It's just lovely.
and so I kind of think of this as my peacock piece, actually.
Can you show us a little bit closer up how those collaged
Yeah.
colors work?
So yeah, and this again, another one of the
Yeah,
stands that I made.
incredible.
Lovely bit of Victorian oak
Yeah,
theme.
just the
So,
difference. So good. Yeah, wonderful.
so there's the collage, which
And
was
these were sweet wrappers, were
sweet
they?
wrappers and sequins, or some kind of sequiny things,
Yeah.
and the fruit mesh.
Yes. Yes, all the
And
ingredients that make you happy.
yes, the needle weaving. I
Mm,
guess the reason why the fruit mesh and all of these things come in
yeah.
is because I take my materials from my home environment. So I already have a vocabulary of materials.
Yeah.
And so I see no point in buying anything more.
No.
So if you
And it's another
just look at it,
constraint as well that kind of
yeah,
feeds your creativity. You're like, how can I then? If I don't
yes,
go to the shop, what can I do? And I
yes,
think that's really exciting. Like when I kind of think, well, I don't have exactly that color. So what happens if I just paint a piece of fabric the color that I want it? What does that do now? This
yeah,
unexpected addition, and like, yeah,
yes.
yeah,
And also I'm on a low budget. I can't afford to buy the super luxury materials. And again, why do I need to? I
yeah,
just don't.
because super luxury material. Well, if we absolutely know what we're creating, yes, maybe. But when we're in this play stage, it
Yes,
would hamper us. It would be like, oh, can I,
yes. Do
and
I dare
also that
you?
we both have a big pillar of sustainability to our
Yes,
practice. So it
yes.
fits. It
But
fits.
also, as you say, it's the freedom of not being scared because you can throw it away or recycle it rather.
Or chop it up
So
and remake it.
yes, exactly. All of that.
Yeah.
So, and that takes the fear factor away for sure.
Yeah.
And that definitely helps.
Hmm.
So I think did we oh yeah, there's another piece here which is dots, fold, and the things I was already living with.
Oh, wow.
So whoops, there we go.
Oh,
This
wonderful.
was a pig to try and make a stand for. I couldn't work it out at all. So
And
um
it again, that sort of takes time, doesn't it?
yeah,
And then which way do you put it on the wall like that?
yes.
Or,
Yes, is it something you
yeah.
yeah. I mean
I
again,
think that's what's been an unexpected delight of Zoom, actually, when you guys show your work, you're sort of showing it in all angles and sometimes with the light coming through from behind. And, it's a
yeah,
totally different thing that you would think it would be best to see it in person, but Zoom adds a whole other video, can add a whole
definitely.
other layer to it sometimes.
Yes,
You know?
yes, definitely. And especially if you're working with someone like me who is currently so three-dimensional, which
Mm.
I never in a million years expected myself to produce work like this. Um, so, but of course, what it is complete freedom for me.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, all of a sudden. So this was grids.
Wow, yes. Tell us
Um,
your thinking. So I announced grids, and
yes.
what did you think?
Well, I already had all the circles
Oh, it's
that
amazing.
I'd stitched.
Right.
So I thought, okay, now it's grids.
Yeah.
Are we going to put
What
grids?
layer can we put on this?
Yes. I
It's
guess it was
quite
partly by,
amazing. It's such an art piece because it evokes so many reactions in you. Like, how did you do it? Why does this make me feel slightly uncomfortable? Like nature kind of like bundling
yeah,
up something, or yeah. We had a
I
lot
think
of
it,
conversations about this, didn't we?
we did. And I think it's also maybe partly a slight bit of reference to Barbara Hepworth, who I've always loved.
That
With that
tension.
tension. Yeah, that was really important, that it wasn't just loose lines, that it had to be under tension.
Yeah.
And I mean, it took me ages, as one might expect.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what shape it was going to be. But then I reached a point where I thought, right, I've had enough of working on this piece.
Yeah.
So it
It's
stopped.
done.
Yes, exactly. And then funny enough, this has got the most inventive of the various stands as well. Perhaps because
I remember.
the so
I
there's
love
a
the way that they are detachable as well.
yes.
I thought maybe they were permanent, but they're not, are
No, no, I've just kind of presented them as if there's a
they?
stand.
Yeah.
So it's a heater vent,
Yeah.
a bed spring, and the scaffolding board.
Love
So
it.
then I hung this piece on
Yes.
the end of the bed
Yes.
spring.
Almost
And
like it had been collected from some other universe.
yes, so it's a slightly alien piece.
Yes.
Um, Obviously better photographs are on my Instagram
Yeah.
page. It does mean that I can transport it more easily by taking the sculpture off, which is useful. Otherwise, I'd have to build great big boxes to put them in. I
Yes.
may yet
No,
have
totally.
to.
It is totally useful. I kind of love the way it just hooks on and you
Yeah.
can play with that.
Yes, that's true. It means which is another thing which is creeping in more,
Yeah.
is that capacity to reinvent the piece by moving it, changing it another way. And
Yeah.
we'll come back to that one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So where are we at? I
Well,
think,
we are kind of around the period where we did trims and braids and fold.
yes. So fold, right. That was this piece.
Yes.
So this was fold, and I just got hooked by the amazing wiggly line that
Was
you got.
this wasn't blinds. You had just chopped up at this
Yeah,
point. Sorry, I'm
yeah.
giving it away. What happened next?
Well,
But
it really was just pieces of
rectangular
plastic.
pieces that you
Yeah, and I had to work out a way of joining them, and
mm,
I didn't want the join to be ugly.
yeah,
So I just started stitching, and I discovered that if I made the stitch nice and loose,
yeah,
I got this really loopy effect, which I really liked.
yeah.
Um, I still don't know whether it's complete,
Mm,
but because it's got that really tactile quality,
yes. That's almost
um,
what completes it. But how do
yes,
you present that, or is
yes,
it an interactive sculpture? I don't know. It's
no,
almost like it's kinetic, and you kind of
it
want
is,
something to kind of move it in an,
yes,
so that you don't have to touch it. But we'll get there.
yeah.
We'll come.
So, so that was fold.
Yeah.
Um, I've just remembered there was another grid one,
Yeah.
which I have yet to complete, mainly because I went off on to the next thing.
Oh,
But I made these little
yes, I
frisbee
remember.
shaped ones. And then I discovered I made them before the bigger one. I discovered that by overlapping the long threads, I got my grids
Mm,
without specifically
yes.
making a grid.
And I remember us slightly dreaming about making these huge.
Yes, yeah,
It's kind of got that kind of futuristic stone circle thing to it at the minute,
yeah.
when you're showing
And
it
they,
like that.
I can't show
But
it because
almost scientific as well. But yes, I see what you mean. Yeah.
and I think, and the other thing is that it's starting to reference the shadows at this point as well. So when I put them in the photographs, I started getting wonderful shadows. Shadows go right back to my foundation days as well. I
I've
did
got to show
several
you
pieces.
actually there. I went to an exhibition at the weekend at Compton Burney of women's work, and they had a whole room with this huge paper cutout um sort of circular sculpture, piece in
Mm,
it. But then they had a bulb in the middle. And so the whole room was encompassed in the shadows. It was
wow.
incredible. So
Yeah.
just actually sometimes going out and seeing things like that, your brain just starts going ping,
Yeah.
how can we do this? How could we
Yeah.
incorporate light into it so that it
Yeah.
throws out its detail into, and
Yeah.
that's so exciting.
And I think what's also really exciting is taking fiber art into an area that if somebody says to you fiber art, you
Yeah.
do not think of large pieces of threads and shadows.
Yeah. But
So
yeah,
there's
yeah.
and it just your brain just doesn't even begin to go there.
Well, it's been touched on. I mean, Sheila Hicks has done those huge textile sculptures, but we need more. But
Talking
it,
of
but it gives you the confidence when you know that you're fully in and embodying work that you absolutely love with all the ingredients that you love. Your confidence to then move off and do that
yes,
is
and
much greater.
changing scale all the way along. I've been saying to you, Jane, we need to do scale. We need to do scale because it's nagging my brain. So I kept saying that to you,
So we
and
did. We did a prompt of,
we did. And so then um I went to
wow,
shoelace size thread
yes.
and miniature
Yes.
thread. So that's about
Because
the
scale
size.
is not also, yeah, it's not always just bigger, but
No,
yes, it's a whole different technical game to go
yeah,
back.
yeah.
Mm,
So there's the same technique
yeah,
with both and the
wonderful.
same formula of stitches,
Yeah,
but so different.
yeah.
Um, that's a little lovely little delicate piece that
Have you any
um,
idea how you might display that piece?
I don't know. I think it probably just rests on a surface
Yeah.
or possibly in a treasure box.
Or possibly an even bigger dome that's kind of like really accentuates how tiny it
Yes,
is, you
it
know?
needs to be lit for
Yes.
sure. Um, and it's got graduated cut. I don't know, you can't really see the color very well. So there's turquoise, there's yellows and creams started creeping in that one.
It does have a real
Um,
thing like that it's an egg that something has emerged from it
yes,
almost, doesn't it?
yes. And I suspect that's why I stopped at that point because
Yeah,
I think that
because you were ready to emerge, birth a larger piece.
yes. I'm not sure in which order they happen, to be honest, but
Oh, I like it that let's make it that order.
anyway,
Yeah,
so
the
and I really
possibility is that it was kind of happening simultaneously, because that's another thing that I kind of realized well, I realized that from kind of being around painters, that they were always working on 6 or 7 pieces at the same time, if not more.
yes,
And why
yes,
couldn't we? We were
yes,
never really taught that because it's so integrated into a textile practice that you do the sketchbooks and the research and you have a plan, as you
yes,
said.
yes,
Why not be
yeah,
experimenting with loads of different things?
yeah. Well, maybe had I been braver at college, I would have just said to them, no, I'm doing this. And like you did.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but I suspect that actually, in some ways, I probably would have found my métier better. We
Mm.
haven't touched on this one yet.
Oh, this one was incredible.
So
Tell
this
us more.
one was collage, stitch, fold, and floral,
Wow.
all in one piece.
Yes.
Um, and it
What's in the center as well? Tell us a bit about the
oh
center.
yeah, the center, well, you can see really,
Yeah.
can't you? Mapping pins stuck into a cork.
Yeah. Wonderful.
But
Wonderful.
they just made it. I've managed to break a stitch or two, so I need to repair it. But It's mainly because it's been transported around a lot. So yeah, that was aluminium can as well, which
Okay.
I used to do quite a bit with, and it's starting to creep in a bit more.
Yeah.
So
That
um,
wardrobe of techniques just sort of
yeah, yeah,
gently working together, I guess.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I think we're virtually up to present
Do you
day.
have a favorite prompt then? Would that have been dots because that's when it all started to happen?
Yeah, I guess so.
Mm.
Um, I mean, there are some things that I've done what I would call completed pieces with. So, oh, we didn't cover scraps, did we?
No, no, sorry, I
Mm.
thought we hadn't got that one.
No, no, I'm just thinking, I'm looking at my pieces of work. Maybe this was, might have been automated stitch as well. I'm really not sure. I can't remember what I was doing at that stage, but I'd never done a bulb before. Um,
Yes.
so that was my first one.
Yeah.
And you can see the signature colours at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, anyway, and I thought, oh, I really
That
rather
was
like
that was
this.
water soluble.
It was,
So
yes,
that, that in a way is bringing in another technique that you
yeah,
know that you can use when you need it.
yeah, and that was tiny scraps.
Yeah.
This too was
Yeah.
tiny scraps. I like this one because it makes me think of bantam feathers around the edges,
It
but
really does.
it was just a spotty silk
Yeah.
tie
Yeah.
cut up into scraps. So, and the body of it, in fact, again, is fruit mesh.
Right.
You
Yes.
don't see that, do you? So, um, so I do like this one a lot.
Yeah. I love
Um,
that. I love the color as well.
I went more figurative. So that was cherry blossom, um, there. This
Funny
was,
how they pop in sometimes, like from the nature prompt, you kind of have these
yeah,
odd figurative things like drawings
yeah,
almost like remind you because you don't really work in a sketchbook either, do you?
no,
No.
no.
Yeah.
It's again, it's flat. I think
To burst out and
my
move.
sketchbooks are just three-dimensional. And
Yeah.
in fact, saying that, going back to my college sketchbooks, they were actually concertina shaped
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because I had so many 3D samples in them. Yeah, I couldn't actually contain them.
Yeah.
So um,
Love
this
it.
was cherry blossom
Yeah.
at night time. Um, and I went off into some
I love
more,
the way you can't help but when you're holding a bowl to kind of slightly manipulate it and go, could I?
yes, and I think that's there. So that was unmaking and the stitch,
Mm.
um, oh,
I love the shape of that.
yes.
It's
Well, you
just
see,
doing its own and echoing almost into what you're doing now with these kind of
yes,
bubbled, like
yes.
let it do its
These
organic thing.
came before the 3D
Yes. Yeah.
other pieces. So I everybody keeps telling me this is a jellyfish. I never intended it to be a jellyfish, but it has that quality
But we
about.
do like to see things in it.
Yes,
But
yes.
yeah, you just kind of change it or you
I
make a
really,
group of them and
yes,
you do your thing so that
yes.
they become not that.
And this was automated stitch. I remember now, actually. So I think this was the automated stitch era, followed by
Have
the
you ever
scrap.
thought about any kind of way of coloring in the clear, looking at your color, your
Yes,
clear bottles, or
I
using
have. Yes, and I think
you have used bottles. You've used a
yes,
green bottle in your one of your latest pieces, haven't you?
yes, and I've discovered that coloring them in was a bit harder. I want to investigate dyeing. I
Yes, that's more than what I was thinking.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, because that will give me a little bit more control. You can draw on it with Sharpies,
yeah.
but the difficulty with Sharpies that I wasn't sure about was that you get a very rigid sort of line rather than a painterly line.
Mm.
And where they overlap, you get the sort of overlap that you get with Sharpie. Now, obviously, if you let it dry, then you can build another layer and then you can build another layer. And that works for me.
Mm. Mm.
However, I haven't yet done much with it.
Yeah, and actually, I think I prefer the stitch.
Yes, and I suppose that's where,
As a sort of drawing into and having a
yeah,
line present, the stitch really is
yeah.
beautiful for me.
Well, if
And
I were to bring words in it, maybe that would be my route.
maybe.
So, so
But-
that's another
So do you
possibility.
have that flower, the tea bags and the
Yes,
not
yes.
that one?
So,
Just talking
um,
about that central piece.
yes, let's just briefly dive off
Oh,
into
sorry.
framing
Into
while
what?
I think about it.
Oh,
So this
wow. Yeah.
that was the framing that I was talking about. So I thought I want to try and make things that might be more,
Yeah.
uh, I'm not sure what the word is, slightly less reclaimed material feel and much more sort of polished gallery feel, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's what this is, a cake stand.
It's beautiful.
Um, so again, that was how to demonstrate that I could do something that seems quite normal.
You just can't go. You can't go to a kind of town or go to a like even a kitchen shop without going.
Yes, yes, exactly. I could use that material for that. I
Yeah.
buy things for the color of the plastic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I do. I haven't yet used lots, but the lovely shiny colors you get on the cat food packets are calling me. So
Yes, yes,
um,
yes, yes.
so this
Wonderful.
was
So what
the
was this in the center of this?
plastic file divider,
Yes, that's right.
um, wire from floristry, which
Yeah,
all of these things came from the scrap space.
yeah,
And then this was corrugated blind fabric.
yes.
So
A
it was all,
beautiful addition to your work, the
yeah.
corrugated blind with
And
stitch
then
and then tea bags.
the leaf-like things are tea bags, yes. So it was just running stitch. That's the only thing in
Yeah,
terms of embroidery. See, I'm not an embroiderer,
yeah,
so I'm a mark maker.
yeah.
Yes.
It's so evident throughout your work, you
Yeah.
know. And I
So
remember
that,
you saying to me that you were slightly worried that your embroidery wasn't like perfect enough, but I love it that it's not, you know.
yeah,
It's perfect. I want to see the knots and the marks and you know
yeah, it's casual and it's
it's
no
pretty
rules.
perfect to me. You definitely stitch in much better straight line than I can. But a lot of the time with what you're doing, you're making the holes and then you're working through with the stitch, aren't you? So
Yes, yes. But
yeah,
I don't measure anything. I am far too impatient for that. Except a little bit occasionally if I have to
yeah.
achieve the thing. But I don't
But
I
again,
suppose,
with this piece as well, you're kind of it's the opening
yeah,
and closing that is
it
so
is.
wonderful.
It's that quality of what is
Mhm.
it like folded up
Yeah,
and what is it like opened out, and which way should it be opened. I did a little quiz of people to ask them which side they preferred, and of course there was a random number of people who just said, oh, I prefer what I considered the back.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
considered this one with the pink stitch showing the
yeah.
front. So but I yeah, there's no, and
But I
funny
think
enough,
that's what's
this
so interesting with documenting this journey, because with sharing it, we can
mm,
get different ideas coming in as well. You know, if
yeah,
people comment on this video and sort of, you know, just see what people's opinions are.
just to point out that
Yeah,
this was loops gone wrong, that
I
fluffy.
love them.
So
What are they?
I started doing loops. It's with tapestry warp, funnily enough. A friend of mine gave me loads of it.
Yeah.
And the I did the loops on the end of it and I thought, no, I really don't like those. So I started unpicking them and then having trimmed them, I thought, oh, now I like
That's-
it. So
Yeah,
it stayed. And
wonderful. I
that
really like them too.
it's that serendipity, isn't it? That
Mm.
I could not have told you that I would make that fluffy, nor could I have told you that I would use tea bags.
Uh-huh.
Um, it was simply, what have I got next to me?
Yeah. And what
Um,
works? And what can
and
I
what,
throw onto
yes,
things?
and
And
yeah, that's where
yeah,
it's about the decision making, isn't it? And that's something that I've always said to people. It's not what you do, it's the decisions you make as you do it,
Yes.
for sure. And that way, and I only make intuitive well, I say only, mostly make intuitive
But
decisions.
those intuitive decisions are also happening when you're going out and you're sourcing things, the things that you bring in so that you have that decision on your desk. It's not, it's actually much more thought out than we think it is.
I suppose so,
Not
yes.
just happening on your desk. Oh, that
No,
happens to be there. You chose that for
that's
a
true.
reason when you were out and you've curated all
Yes,
the stuff that we
yeah,
bring in.
yeah. Well, the minute I picked up that roller blind stuff, it
Yes.
was, oh my goodness,
Oh,
look at the
just
sculptural
it's
form
incredible.
that
Did
one
you
can,
stand in the scrap store and kind of move it and go,
yes,
oh, yes.
yes,
Yeah.
instantly,
Oh,
instantly.
is
And
this starting to
therefore,
happen? Oh, yes.
I'm starting to put colour in it. I
Mm,
think, yeah, this was float because it's floating above
I
the
love it.
um thing there.
Yeah.
But I'm somehow this feels like it should be so much simpler because it's about the shape of
Yes.
that than
Yes.
it is about the detail of the stitch.
Absolutely.
So as yet, it's only gone a small way with fibre.
Yeah, but the more you
Um,
look at it in different directions, the way you're showing it to us, looking
yes,
down those channels,
yes,
whatever stitch you put in will make different views, or even if you just have some small stitch within those spaces.
yeah. Well, it
But
reminds me of those very large palm leaves, so I may go have a look at those and see if something shouts at me
I
from
kind of
them.
want to dip it in marbling as well, just at the edges.
Oh, that's interesting.
Maybe we'll do that.
Yes, yes. Well, that could be, maybe I could collage something with it.
Mm.
Um, so
But
I've
as you
gone,
say, because you can get more of it, you
yes,
can try. And that's kind of what it really has made me sort of think, I have an idea. Let's just do that. Let's just dip it in the marbling water and see what happens. Only because the other day I dipped something in, but didn't put the whole lot in. I just literally dipped the edge. And it was so nice to have this wave of marbling around the edge
yes,
that
just at the
stopped,
end of it.
because
Yeah,
it's not something I associate with marbling. I was like, how
no,
could I mask marbling? Oh, you probably can't. I don't really know. Do you know what I mean? And just could
yes,
I? What could I
yes.
do? We're
Uh,
incorrigible, aren't we,
just,
Deborah?
just putting the tip of it in. Yes.
Yes.
We see, I'm wondering whether I can marble this.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Um, which is milk bottle plastic. So
Yeah.
I've moved away from transparency now.
Amazing.
And again, I'm still in that sort of circles zone.
You're just in an incredible exploration of art, fine art, really,
Yeah, yeah,
with these elements that you've always wanted to play with, sculpture,
yes,
sort of vintage inspiration, vintage stitch inspiration that comes into a drawn element with your stuff, and it's
yeah,
just, and this upcycling that Deborah
yes,
remade thing. So you're gathering together all of these elements of your life and bringing them into that kind of, there is a constraint around your work, and then you're further constrained in a way by the next prompt, which
yes,
suits, because then you can
yes. And it really works. I
shoot off
think without that
ideas without
frame,
being overwhelmed.
yes. And
Yeah.
funny enough, it goes again that I think that advice came to me. I met, oh, Marianne Straub, who is a very well-known Bauhaus, I
Okay.
think she was Bauhaus trained weaver
Yeah.
anyway. Um, and oh, she was this lovely, tiny little old lady with her hair caught up in a bun.
Yeah.
And she came in and she told us that
Was
she
this when you were
only,
at college?
yes,
Yeah.
she only used a 4-shaft loom and she never used black.
Right. Wow.
And she said that the constraints of those two things were so central and more than enough
Okay.
in her
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And I think I encountered it again in one of the stitch groups, and I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, they said about having parameters
Yeah.
in the same way. So you only use running stitch,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
only use 4 stitches, or
Yes.
you only use 4 colors,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah,
I think that is really important.
yeah. And
Yeah,
then go right down that rabbit hole
yeah,
and
yeah,
embrace it. Yeah.
yeah. And so yeah, I think that definitely stuck with me from way back then. But a lot of the work I did then was very much more what you might call academics based, in that I took topics such as the one I won prizes with was called Babylon in Berlin.
Yeah.
And it was for the topic of freedom. So it was the Berlin Wall and the walls of Babylon, which are actually in the
And that was
Pergamon.
actually quite figurative as well, wasn't it?
It was very figurative in that I used the imagery from the Perga, from the Babylon walls. And there were fantasy dragons and lions and all sorts, and the colours were amazing because they were gold and you name it. Kath Fassett really didn't like my my piece, and I was so disappointed that I actually gave it away later, which I
Oh
should never have done.
no.
I just went,
Because some people are not going to like, you know,
yes,
what you do, and it doesn't mean to say that it's not perfect
yeah,
for others.
no. But
And I think,
interestingly, the style of the piece, I can't remember if I've got any photographs on my page, and I must maybe put them on there. Um, it was like a sort of giant seashell. It had a 15-foot circumference. We measured
wow,
it. So that was the
wow,
edge of the Berlin Wall, which was padded, which
yeah,
if you ever look at the Berlin Wall, it's got a sort of rounded top.
yeah,
And me and my friends spent so long sewing this 15-foot circumference. And when it moved, it did what my shapes
yeah,
currently do, and it wriggled
right.
um and it was a coat with a hood and this sort of huge hem that ran all over the place.
Mm.
Anyway, so um
But it's
but I think
interesting, you've come back round to that.
yes. And I think that's where I need to be because it was really big, this piece.
Mm,
And what they liked about it was my combination of the topic of Babylon with Berlin for
yeah.
freedom. Um, and again, that gave me the parameters to build the piece. But there we go.
Yeah, but it's really interesting to keep looking back and going, what is this and what am I aiming to do
yeah,
to bring in all these elements of my life? And slowly, as we said, we've just been through
yeah,
3 years, and where you are now,
yeah,
and the pieces that you're making now, it might be 3 years again until
yes,
this huge piece comes, but it will come because
yes,
you're completely on the right path.
yes. Well, it's
That's right.
very definitely, as you say, growing. I've got the seeds.
Yes.
Um, and my vision for the future is to go really large scale as best I can. That is limited by what the materials will do if I stick to my recycled,
But
but
maybe it moves again.
yeah, yeah.
No.
And I also picture my work in a gallery, a posh London one in Chelsea, maybe. Might as well
And
aim.
people walking through it and experiencing it.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean, it's incredible to think of that. And
yeah.
yes, it
So
has to.
that's
What?
my goal. But
Oh,
none of it would have happened without joining the No Rules group,
and I'm
which
so glad, so glad you did, because I have loved being part of your journey, as is everybody else. And
yeah.
thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Absolutely so inspiring. I can't wait to see where it all takes you next. So where can people find you, Deborah? On Instagram.
On Instagram, which I have nowhere near enough work on, but it's under Deb, and
Yeah,
then the word remade, and the whole thing is all as one word.
wonderful.
Um, and as not surprisingly, there is only one Deb remade out there, so you won't not find me. Um,
Oh,
so
well,
there we
thank
go.
you so much. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. It's been
Yeah, it's fascinating to have that overview of it. And
really,
it
really.
never occurred to me now that that Babylon piece was so sculptural then.
I
And then
love that.
I see it here, and then it's, yes. Anyway,
Wonderful. Thank you.
my
Bye.
pleasure. It's great fun. Bye.
I'm just, bye.